My project, entitled To Be Seen, is a proposal for an urban playscape which would exist in Gemmayze, Beirut. The brief invited us to study an old abandoned structure in the area and to imagine building upon it to create a spatial apparatus for a keeper, who would be living in it and caring for a small public program. The building chosen can be accessed from an alleyway off of Gros Street, the main artery of Gemmayze. This sketch highlights the frontal approach into the building as it reveals itself from between branches and surrounding structures. It can also be accessed on foot directly from the St. Nicholas stairs. These two axial approaches, forming an L-shaped pathway, mark two potential beginnings of a certain narrative sequence through the space, which starts in the central hall of the house, to which all peripheral rooms are connected while being spatially disconnected between themselves. This large central space, open to the light, then bifurcates into tighter and tighter spaces until one reaches the garret, which is this narrow platform existing above one of the corridors and which I read as our dead end, a place where one could potentially choose to hide away from peering eyes. The narrative sequence then becomes an act of coiling into oneself. An alternate narrative I imagined is the experience of the building through the eyes of a child, exploring an abandoned urban relic. I was interested by the thought that, maybe, the narrow spaces in the structure aren't narrow at all, but simply built to the scale of children. As I started tying all these ideas together, I took a picture of a Kurdish bride that I found lying on the floor next to the structure during the site visit. I imagined her as my keeper and built my story around her. The early morning light seeps through the windows of her perforated shell, laying its emptiness bare for the neighbors to see. This house is all she has left, her little Kurdistan. These walls, which she built to the pace of her family's growth, now enclose a silence heavy with remembered echoes of laughter and song. Who will fill these rooms now? How do walls remain standing when the soul they enclosed has been carved out? She is not a Kurd, nor an Arab, not a mother, nor a widow. Her body lies fallow like the ground on which she stands at the threshold of communities. In the shell of her body's shadow, she decides to hide away from the oppressive gaze of a city who refuse to see her. The garret would be her haven, her shelter, and her coffin. Until a group of kids playing hide-and-seek finds her and helps her find warmth in the light once again. This is a quote from Gaston Bachelor's The Poetics of Space. By staying in the motionlessness of its shell, the creature is preparing temporal explosions, not to say whirlwinds, of being. So my intention was to conceive a spatial apparatus which would allow this woman to coil out of her shell, rising vertically to finally be seen amongst the neighboring buildings, and finding meaning in being a keeper for the neighborhood's children, who would come to play in the structure. Such a program fits into the context of the milieu, which lacks in safe places for children to play in the city and presents opportunities for creating communal interaction between the residents. The existing structure, understood as an urban relic, presents a lot of windows in its larger rooms, which completely opens it to the neighbors from all sides. This ever-present gaze, which the Kurdish woman initially wanted to hide away from, turns from an oppressive force to a protective envelope, watching over the uncoiling. I was reminded here of Jane Jacobs' The Death and Life of Great American Cities, because she talks about the concept of eyes on the street and how that gives a sense of safety and community in public spaces. This observation shifted my interest to the garden in front of the house as a potential play space for the children, because it presents both spatial qualities of openness to the community and sense of enclosure because of its retaining walls. The garden as it is now lies on a depressed plane, making it inaccessible. Further study of the structure made me notice many other platforms which are spatially disconnected from each other. The garret lies on an interstitial platform, which is why I wanted, in my intervention, to turn the space from a dead end into a node in the circulation path, a liminal space connecting the wider slabs, and the starting point of an urban playscape to be discovered, climbed, walked under, through, and over. The playscape would coil out from the garret in a pinwheel organization around the central hall of the existing structure, from which would rise the keeper's house, a watchtower from which the woman could see the children. The kids' circulation path would culminate in the garden. As I designed the playscape, I used the formal strategy of reassembling fragments and details of the existing structure to create moments of exploration, hiding, and revealing. So the structure I came up with is characterized by openness, platforms connected by elongated circulation paths exaggerating the oblongness of the garret, and a sense of discovery created by the vertical planes which punctuate the child's movement through the spaces. Ramps, as well as climbing walls, allow the child to go from one level to the next, creating a sense of playfulness. There you see all the plans for the project, showing the overall path of movement of the keeper and of the kids. The openings in the playscape, which relate to the existing structure, strategically frame the moments to come and give the child visual cues as to where to go next. But these openings are also what allow for both the keeper and the neighbors to watch over the children as they play and discover the urban relic in stages. Skylights were cut into the existing structure to serve this purpose, but they also create implied directionality in the space as the child gets redirected to the main circulation paths. So there's not one circulation path through the playscape, but the branching paths always loop back to the main L-shaped artery. The keeper's watchtower was designed with a similar logic, using light channeled through glass doors, windows, and slits to delineate an ascending spiraling path, where each level connects to the playscape in a unique way, as shown in the pictures, while still allowing for a margin of privacy when needed. For example, this window in the living space connects the keeper to the garden, yet it is placed at 1.4 meters above the ground, allowing for different uses depending on how the keeper chooses to interpret the built-in furniture. Under normal conditions, the three platforms exist as a seating area, a desk, and a counter. The window is too high to look through and only allows light in. Yet the keeper can choose to reinterpret the ground level of the room, which turns from an introverted space to an extroverted working space. The different rooms of the house exist on mezzanines, which allow for full visual continuity and a sense of lightness in a cramped space. The path culminates at the roof of the watchtower, which is directly connected to the playscape by a passageway, allowing for the keeper to reach the children when needed. The main access point into my project is from the alleyway off of Gouro Street. At the ground floor, the passage of entry is emphasized by two parallel vertical planes which channel the visitor upwards, starting the spiral path formulated around the east and west elevations of the watchtower. These elevations are in fact the partition walls of the central hall of the existing structure, which I extended upwards to create the facades of the keeper's house. So we have a play of imbricated facades. The towering parallel facades of the keeper's house and the neighboring buildings constitute the main anchoring lines of my project, as they define the spatial zone of the playscape and allow it to feel safe for the children, even though it is completely open. We could even say that the playscape appropriates these facades as its own. The elevations of the neighboring buildings actually form a sort of an inverted facade, as they envelop the playscape and formulate an approach for the nearby children, which starts from their window. So, on the first floor, the visitor passes through the central hall to go up to the garret level. This is the node where the path of the keeper and the children differentiate themselves, as the keeper goes up in the watchtower and the child crawls out into the playscape. The roof of the existing structure, punctuated by skylights, becomes yet another opportunity for exploration and play, as it becomes visually and spatially connected to the garden through the playscape tumbling down into it. By extending the ground level slab into the garden and removing a large chunk of the east elevation of the existing structure, I blurred the boundary between exterior and interior to allow for more vantage points and opportunities for connection. The soft slope of the garden makes the child feel more cocooned and safe. All the unaltered parts of the existing structure are retained as vague terrains, as they are no longer tied to fulfilling any certain need for comfort or isolation. These unused rooms within the existing building remain as testimonies to the layered narrative of the site and exist as receptacles for the children's thoughts and dreams. Most notably, the stairs at the entrance of the playscape at the ground floor block one of the doors of the pre-existing structure. There only remains a low passageway which could potentially be ducked under. On a final note, these are some pictures showing how the playscape I designed may present new spatial qualities when turned in different directions. So there is a playfulness intrinsic to the structure of the playscape, which could let us imagine alternate possibilities for the project, just like the children can choose to repurpose the rooms of the structure for any game they may wish to play.